Hello there. Hello there, hello there, Twitch. How the devil are we all? I'm very well, thank you for asking. Now, it is said, dear viewer, and I presume there's only one of you, that's the way I go. Dear viewer, it's said that one ought not stare too long into the abyss, otherwise the abyss will stare back into you. It's a classic old phrase about seeking to avoid becoming that which you have fought against, that which you opposed. And unfortunately, that great life lesson has not been learned by one Tommy Robinson, who is, I think it's safe to say, a fucking prick. But, more importantly than just his generic failings, he has spent much of his life railing against immigrants, railing against refugees. And that is precisely what he has become. He is fucked off to live in Spain, which is super lol. I think we can all agree. Now, for those who don't know, and why would you know, he's not relevant, he wasn't ever really, but certainly not anymore. Tommy Robinson, real name Stephen Yaxley Lennon, double barrel surname, man of the people. He is a far right agitator piece of garbage. He set up the English Defence League, which were a kind of violent urban rambling society who professed to give a fuck about Muslim rape gangs of like paedophiles and stuff like that, even though many of them have subsequently been convicted of all manner of sexual assault and abuse against, indeed, children in many cases. In fact, one such occasion happened when Tommy was still very much the leadership of the EDL, where a guy called Richard Price was found to have indecent images of children on his computer, and Tommy took the side of the pedophile. But apparently it's okay if it's a white dude. Anyway, that's Tommy. He's a far-right grifting piece of garbage who's managed to amass a significant amount of money, and essentially this boils down to him wishing to offshore his assets in Spain on this occasion. In order to avoid having to pay out a substantial amount of money in damages, because, along with his huge plethora of anti-Muslim bigotry, he engaged in a piece of slander against a school child. There was a famous viral piece of footage that went around, I think it was in 2019, it might have been 2018. Stop watching the cricket, Tony, please. I'm watching it, but I'm allowed to. You're not, you're supposed to be watching me. Anyway, this is one day between England and Ireland. It don't matter. Right. Although England and Ireland do both factor into this story. Never mind. Yes, there was a viral piece of footage went round of a young Muslim child who was being bullied, physically assaulted by a white child. And this was seen quite rightly as the hideously racist, bigoted piece of violence that it was, right? So, but Tommy took the side of the white kid naturally because the white kid was beating up the brown kid. So that's where Tommy was obviously always going to throw his weight behind, and decided to smear both the child themselves and the child's family as having been involved in terrorism. He made these accusations completely without evidence, and have been subsequently refuted, and the child and their family have taken Tommy to court, and he's going to have to pay out a substantial amount in damages. Or at least he probably will, but it'll be slightly more difficult because apparently he's going to try and fuck off to go and live in Spain. That's right, the great patriot, Stephen Yaxley Lennon, man of the people, has fucked off to live in Spain. Which is a huge boon for Britain, because we don't fucking want him here, piece of garbage. But, sorry Spain. I mean, we've done some terrible things to Spain over the years, but it's certainly parts of the 20th century we were sending some of Britain's finest people there to fight in the international brigades for democracy and for socialism. But unfortunately, we're now sending quite the opposite. We're now actually sending fascists, which I think speaks basically to the downfall of Britain as a place in a more general sense. But anyway, so Tommy's decided to fuck off. Now, there are a number of factors at play. Like I say, there's him wanting to offshore his assets so that he thinks he might be able to get away with not paying those damages, which I would be very, very surprised if that were the case, but he's certainly trying. Secondly, having been, like I say, it's funny that having been against immigrants, he's now an immigrant himself. He's not technically claiming refugee status, because obviously he's got no fucking leg to stand on in that regard. Absolute nonsense. But he's essentially claiming to be sort of a refugee. He's claiming a matter of safety is why he needs to leave the country, which is interesting. Interesting, of course, because he literally chased Mike Stutchbury and his family from Britain by doorstepping them and using essentially a kind of terrorism against them. He scared them into having to leave, and they now go and live in Germany now, which is again Britain's enormous loss. Mike Stutchbury, a great lad in general, even if he is just a little bit Australian. But we can't hold that against everyone, because most people aren't Australian, obviously. But anyway, so Mike and his family were forced to leave by Tommy's bullshit. But apparently Tommy's now in danger, which is, you have to feel a little bit of karma, frankly. And also he's lying. We'll get to that though. There's another layer though. The layers of hypocrisy involved in this are spectacular. Because, as the name Lennon in Stephen Yaxley Lennon might suggest, is young Stephen, Tommy, the T-Bone, little fascist munchkin that he is of Irish heritage, not unlike myself. And he has acquired an Irish passport, again, not unlike myself. And he's using that Irish passport to go and live in Spain now, because, dear viewer, if you're from outside of the European Union, which includes Britain now, rather unfortunately, but if you're from America or whatever, if you're from an EU member state, as Britain was up until a few months ago, you can go and live in any other EU member state. You can do that. And that they can come and live here, we can go and live there. It's a lot free, and it allows for the exchange of labour, and holidays are a lot easier, and travel, and just generally the situation is pretty damn fucking good. But Tommy, of course, is a massive fucking hypocrite, because Tommy, fuck the Browns, basically, he wants to get not the Cleveland Browns. I have no idea of Tommy's feelings on that particular NFL franchise. Although, given that they're called the Browns, he's probably not in favour. But anyway, Tommy thinks, fuck the brown people, right? So he's campaigned for Brexit, which was the political movement by which Britain has now left the European Union. Although we're still taking their rules for at least another few months, until at least the end of 2020. Anyway, Tommy consistently campaigned for Britain to leave the European Union, so to strip me and every other person in Britain of the right to go and live in Spain, or to go on holiday to Spain without visas and all the rest of it, having to sort that situation out. So he's campaigned to vote for stripping Britain of all of these rights, and he's circumvented that bullshit by getting an Irish passport, Ireland still being a nation within the European Union, and using that passport to go and live in Spain as a quick fuck you to the entirety of Britain, voting to strip our rights away from us. Now, like I say, I have an Irish passport, so I can go and do that, but a lot of people aren't in that situation. A lot of people have had their rights stripped away, that Tommy is basically just shit on all of those people. Fucking tens of millions in the country. Fuck him. So much. Anyway. So those are the layers of hypocrisy. We'll get into it though in just a little second. As people are pointing out, yes, Britain now on the same level as Kosovo. No offence to the people of Kosovo, but Britain, if we're now on the same level as Kosovo, we've dropped in terms of geopolitical importance and influence. I think it's safe to say. Anyway, let's take a look at Tommy's little brief video, shall we? Where he announced this rather momentous piece of news, that Britain is going to be one fascist short, although frankly his family probably contain at least one other fascist, I imagine, and Britain is losing its village idiot. Although there's another village idiot in number 10 Downing Street, so, it's not all perfect. But anyway, there we go. Yes, how do you spell that, pronounce that? Lascigar or whatever. Thank you. my first ever sub, and you can get the Rory emote. It's there. There, it's in the chat. Anyway, so if you wanted to, if you wanted to give me your money, please do, and you can have a picture of a cat, which I've posted already on fucking interwebs, probably. Anyway, but enough of that distraction nonsense. Let us take a look at Tommy's bullshit. Has that gone onto the right thing? I don't even know anymore. There we go. Yes. So, Tommy doesn't have a YouTube channel anymore. It got terminated. Lol. Maybe it should have gotten an Irish passport and fucked off to Spain. I don't know. Such a patriot, though, isn't he, Tommy? You know, such a patriot. Rather than stick around and try and fix the problems of the country, he's literally just done a runner. Garbage bag. Anyway, as you can see here, though, it's been reposted by a TR Livestreams news channel, which you would think would be very Britain-focused. Bear that in mind, though, because it fucking isn't. Anyway, and as you can see, they posted this video, and they post loads. They post all of his live streams, or clips thereof. And as you can see here, the following content has been identified by the YouTube community as inappropriate or offensive to some audiences. So that's funny in of itself. Yes. So, well, this is the question: do I understand, and do I wish to proceed? Well, obviously yes. Otherwise, I wouldn't have brought it up. Anyway.
So I just finished my paddle, man. I was due to be coming back for a demonstration on Saturday. There's something I haven't told.
Right. So, yes. Let's take a look at young Mr. Yaxley Lennon with his tiny thoughts from a tiny man.
So I just finished my paddle, man. I was due to be coming back for a demonstration on Saturday. There's something I haven't told everyone. I had an incident.
Something he hasn't told us, everyone. Which is surprising to me, because he's usually so honest. Anyway.
Quite a few weeks ago, with an arson. I do have the video of everything, but it was targeted.
So, he's claiming here a rather serious crime. He's saying that his... well, technically, it's not his house. We'll get onto that in just a second. But the house, his abode, let's say, his address of residence, was attacked by an arsonist. Big claim, big claim. Had he reported it to the police, it would have been publicly available information at some point. Over the several weeks he's claiming, so that would have gotten out, no doubt about it. So I'm calling bullshit. He says, and he's doing the typical Alex Jones thing. Yeah, I've got the video of it. I've got the video of all of it. Look, Alex Jones says, I've got the government documents. Never shows them. Never shows them. Tommy's doing a very similar thing here. I've got the video of it. I've got the video footage. Honest. I'm not going to show you, though, because, I mean, even though it would totally prove the thing I'm saying, and therefore it would be in my interest to do so, I'm not going to do so. I'm just going to claim it, and you idiots are going to accept it. And they do. His fans are remarkable twats. Anyway.
Against my property. Well, not against my property, against my wife's property.
That's an important little distinction he just tried to make there. Because Tommy, for a long while, because he keeps being sued, because he keeps being a twat and slandering people and libeling people in really gross ways, including accusations of terrorism and, or at least terrorism affiliation, if that makes sense, people supporting terrorism, accusations of or certainly insinuations of potential pedophilia, things like that, you know. And so he keeps being sued, because people don't like being, you know, slandered and lied about, and libelled and such. So he keeps being sued, so he had to transfer basically most, if not all, of his assets to his wife. Because even though Tommy and his, frankly, ill-gotten gains, and I can say that legally because he is guilty of mortgage fraud, lest we forget, Tommy and his many ill-gotten gains would have been taken from him because of, you know, various court injunctions and things. So he transferred virtually all of his assets, including his, I think it's something like £2 million or £2.5 million house in rural Berkshire. Because again, he's a man of the people, you understand. Even though he lives in one of the most opulent, massive fuck-off country not country manor as such, but a country house. Or did, until recently, until this quote-unquote arson took place. Yeah, anyway, he transferred all of that into his wife's name. because his wife didn't do the slander, so she doesn't have to pay a penny. So they transferred all the assets to her, including this phenomenally expensive house. And so when he says there, my house, he still thinks of it very much as his house, because it is his house. He's lived there. He bought it initially. He lives there. It's still very much his house, but it's legally in his wife's name. So he has to cover his arse legally there by saying, it's not my house, it's my wife's house. Yeah, we see right through you, you fucking huckster. Anywho.
At that point, we left the country straight away. And I'm looking at relocating my family, which is pretty hard to do. And especially with...
It would be extremely hard to do if you didn't have a workaround that you were able to get an Irish passport. It would have been very, very simple if you hadn't voted to strip your own rights and the rights of the rest of Britain by taking us out of the European Union because, you know, you don't like the foreigners, even though you've gone to live amongst the foreigners, although you probably live in a British enclave because, again, even though you claim to be for assimilation, the Brits that go to Spain don't tend to assimilate literally at all. Anyway, yes, Tommy has... so, yeah, you've got a workaround, you've got an Irish passport, so you'll be able to be just fine and dandy on that point. Anyway, yes, so he's moved to Spain. That's the overarching point that's taking place. He's moved to Spain. There's no reason that he had to do that, really. There's lots of places in Britain. He could have moved somewhere else. He could have got out of the public spotlight altogether. But no, Tommy's going to continue the grift on the continent. Grifting mostly British people, I imagine, but still he's going to grift from the continent. We'll see how that goes for everybody. And again, I just want to say, apologies to Spain. We're sending you fucking wrongin'. But anyway.
COVID, I couldn't even get a hotel. Trying to get a hotel, couldn't even find a hotel to move them out to, so...
And that's the big thing here, right? Tommy, of all the COVID stuff, the hundreds of thousands of deaths around the world, the millions of people infected, the huge strain on public services, the nurses and doctors working, 12, 16-hour shifts, whatever, all of that, that pales into comparison. The real victim here is Tommy, because he couldn't find a hotel that he didn't need, because he's making all of this up anyway. But he couldn't find a hotel room. He is the victim, people. Give him all of the money ever.
Obviously, my wife has had enough of everything.
I would not be surprised if she's had enough of you, Tommy, yes. Especially because you're a domestically abusive piece of garbage, too. Again, don't need to worry legally there, because the first time he was imprisoned was because he assaulted an off-duty police officer who had stepped in to try and stop Tommy from assaulting his then girlfriend, his now wife, and the mother of his 2 children. Yeah. Anyway.
Someone gave us somewhere to stay, so we left the country. I was due to be flying back for the demonstration. Obviously, now with this 14-day quarantine, if I fly back, I probably won't go back out. My kid...
Yeah, to be fair, that is a point. He wanted to attend a rally in London on, I believe, Saturday. The group of which we will be taking a look at the end of this particular video. Yes, but he can't do because now the government have introduced a 14-day quarantine period from people coming back from most of Europe, I think, but certainly from Spain. Which is interesting because the transport minister who literally instituted that rule went on holiday to Spain one day before those rules came into effect, which meant he was then subject to 14 days quarantine and had to come back early so he could stay in 14 days quarantine so he could be back at work in time. The man is an idiot, and he's instituting the rules. Amazing. Anyway, but Tommy is at least right on that point. If he went back to Britain, he'd have to stay in 14-day quarantine and wouldn't be able to leave either back to Spain or in anywhere else in Britain. He would be essentially in quarantine by law for 14 days. Anyway. So, and then he wouldn't be able to, then he'd have to go back to Spain, and presumably there's some sort of quarantine at the Spanish end of things. So I will give him that. He's getting out of the thing on Saturday for a legitimate reason, albeit, he's a huckster, so I can understand why some people might think otherwise. But I will give him a pass on that one point.
Kids are out here. I'm still in the process of finding a permanent relocation for him. I've got new schools for my daughters. But that's just an update. Look at me, look at that. Oh, mate. So,
yeah, 4 foot of sweat.
I'm playing paddle. It's great. It's a mix between tennis and squash. But I'm sorry, that's just so I'm letting people know, because when I couldn't be back, people would say, what, he's still away? Because my family are away, because I need my family to be away, because they're not safe, basically.
Oh, really? Oh, see, now I would feel sorry for you if you hadn't driven lots of other people into unsafe situations, including the aforementioned Mike Stutchbury and his family, who literally had to emigrate to Germany. So, I don't feel sorry for you. I feel sorry for your family to a degree, albeit your wife is an adult who could have chosen and should have chosen to leave you a long time ago, but your children had no say in any of this, so I feel sorry for them. They shouldn't have had to go through this upheaval, because their father is a gormless shite. But I don't feel sorry for you in the slightest, Tommy. You're garbage, mate. You've done this. You brought this upon yourself.
And it wasn't Muslims that done this. It was after all the BLM stuff.
It wasn't the Muslims. So for a second you think he's going to be vaguely progressive and say it wasn't the Muslims, don't go around attacking Muslims because of this, they didn't do it. No, it wasn't. No, he wasn't going to be progressive about it. It's not the Muslims, it was the blacks. You fucking tool. God damn, you really are a bigoted shit. Yeah, there you go. His nonsense can always raise a chuckle. Anyway, yeah, so in case you thought he was being racist, it's not the Muslims, it's just the blacks. It's totally fine. Tommy really isn't a racist. Why would anyone think this guy was like some sort of closet Nazi? That's crazy. Crazy talk.
I think I know who it was, so that's just an update.
Is he black? Is he black, Tommy? Is that... I'd be surprised if it wasn't. Hey? You fucking racist twat. God, he's such a fucking prick. Also, Tommy, we know you're making it up. It's so obvious you're making it up. You've done this consistently for fucking years. You've been around for like, as a public figure for like 15 fucking years now. We know your game.
I tried to go live. The reception shit where I am. I'll go live tomorrow night, I think.
Which is odd, because usually the really, really expensive hotels, they usually have good Wi-Fi. So I'm shocked. Although he did say he couldn't find a hotel room, so maybe it's like Jesus in the Bible. They had to stay in a fucking stable, in a manger and all that shit. Oh, it was a nightmare. But he is the immaculate one, of course. So that's fine. Born in a stable. No, sorry, not born in a stable. He just smells like shit because that's what he talks.
But that's just letting you all know I won't be there. The demonstration's still on. I'll be doing a speech. It's still on outside in London for Hearts of Oak, but that's just an
Hearts of Oak. Make note of that little name there, because I'd never heard of them before. We're going to be taking a look just shortly.
update for me to say, unfortunately, I've got my flights booked, but because they've changed the regulations on COVID bullshit, I won't be able.
COVID bullshit. Now, this is interesting because even though he's saying they've changed the laws about COVID bullshit, that could be read generously as him saying the rules and the application of those rules are bullshit. But considering he's engaged in at least borderline conspiracy nonsense when it comes to COVID and actual out-and-out conspiracy nonsense when it comes to virtually everything else he's ever said, and he hangs around with people who are doing the whole COVID is a total fucking fraud invented by Dr. Fauci and is being transmitted via 5G and the Wuhan lab and the George Soros is fucking your wife. All of that, right? I'm not going to read it generously. I'm going to suggest that he thinks that the COVID-19 is itself bullshit. It would not surprise me in the slightest. He is, after all, a fucking twat. Anyway.
We'll come back. And I would come back, but my kids and family are out here, so I literally drove out here with them. Peace.
Now, he drove out there, that's possible. I've been on holiday to Barcelona via coach twice. So it is possible to get to Spain via road. Well, not only is it possible, it's done. It's a thing that happens. Yes. Now, you'd think this, look, as I mentioned at the start, the Tommy Robinson live stream news channel, you'd think would be very Britain-based, wouldn't you? Now you may notice that there's 11 seconds left of this video, and he's just said peace, and he doesn't say another word from now on. So what happens?
We will make America great again.
What? What is that about? This is supposed to be about a British guy moving via an Irish passport to Spain, and yet the end of it is a Trump Make America Great Again advert. What in the name of fuckety fuck is that about? I mean, it couldn't be that Tommy Robinson's entire bit, although he claims to be against extremist Islam, is just white supremacist nonsense, and that Trump himself has become a byword for white supremacist nonsense, and you put two and two together, and that makes sense. I think that might be true. I think that might be exactly what's taking place there, and that everyone knows that's what they is, but they've got plausible deniability. Because they can just say, oh, well, we support Trump in general. Trump's not a white supremacist. Honest. And they're liars. Anyway, Hearts of Oak. Are an interesting organisation I thought I'd tell you about. Now, this is the organisation who are putting on the thing on Saturday that Tommy can't go to because of the COVID regulations and the lockdown and all the 14-day isolation for returnees and all the rest of it, or people travelling from Spain to Britain. Hearts of Oak. Right now, the phrase itself could be one of two meanings. Heart of Oak is the name for, or the motto of the British Navy, which I didn't know, because I was looking them up and I was like, what the fuck is this? But it was also a regiment set up in New England during the American Revolutionary War, which would seem odd for a British group, but considering we just saw a Trump campaign ad at the end of that thing, who knows? I would guess it was the British Navy thing, but whatever. They've called themselves Hearts of Oak. They've got a Union Jack in a heart on an oak, just in case you didn't quite get the message. Anyway, who are these lovely, lovable chaps? Well, anyone who's been watching my YouTube channel will notice one particular chappy chap there. Boom! Sargon of Akkad, aka Carl Benjamin, aka Carl of Swindon. The milkshake magnet, along with Tommy Robinson, of course, and Matt O'Connor. These are the three contributors. These are the three head honchos of the Hearts of Oak organisation, who are putting on this thing on Saturday, which, just as an aside, they're asking for what was the court-mandated removal of the Rotherham paedophile ring, who many of the people are dual citizens, Pakistani and British, and they've been ordered to be extradited to be expelled from Britain back to Pakistan, and that hasn't happened yet, which it should, because if the court said it should, then there's no reason that shouldn't happen. So that's what they're campaigning for, which, in general, I think I support. I would never march with any of these pieces of shit in a million fucking years, because their whole thing is kick all of the brown people out. They might not say it outright, certainly not publicly, but we all know that's where they're going. But in terms of the stated reason for the march, the extraditing... No, it's not extradition, just expelling, the removal of them from the country, I'm fine with. That's fine. I don't want pedophiles in the country. Unlike Tommy, who's defended pedophiles in the past. But there we go. And of course, Carl, who has been more than happy to do jokes about rape. And not against rape, pro-rape. So that's a thing. Anyhow. But Tommy can't make it back. So, who are these lovable rogues? Well, like I say, Sargon of Akkad, YouTuber, right-wing piece of shit who has palled around with any number of Nazi pricks, including, of course, helping to try and spread the lies about Heather Heyer, the woman who was murdered by a terrorist, right-wing terrorist, far-right terrorist, at Charlottesville. Carl lied about her, because he's a piece of shit. Tommy, of course, who we've discussed, is a hypocritical immigrant now, which is interesting. And Matt O'Connor is a men's rights activist, albeit at least started off as a vaguely sensible men's rights activist. He started the organisation Fathers for Justice, who some people may know. They were most famous for, hang on a second, Fathers for Justice Batman. This made international news at the time a few years ago. Yes. Fathers for Justice, who were trying to get like access for dads to kids and stuff. Someone dressed as Batman scaling the walls of Buckingham Palace there in the centre of London. And this has happened various places. Look, this is another example there of they dress up as superheroes and then climb things. There's another one. Yeah, there's a dude there. He's not really dressed up, that one, but he's got a thing. And that's basically what they would do. They would dress up as superheroes and climb on top of things and say, a father's rights, a father is for life, not just conception, which... Talk to those who want financial abortions, lads, is all I'll say. But anyway, yeah, there they are, dressed up as things. So, and he started that organisation, which I think did some good in terms of the discussion, but has subsequently joined forces with the likes of Carl and Tommy. So maybe he has taken a bit of a dive. Now, what I especially love is this. You say, press on learn more, that happens. So they've got a learn more button. Oh no. They've got a learn more button that doesn't take you anywhere, as you do. Anyway, so our issues. Let's take a look at our issues. The first one is grooming gang scandal. Let's have a look. You can tell where their priorities lie, can't you? In 2016, I published the second edition of Easy Meat, the only book in Britain which exposes the history and scale of the grooming cover-up. What's Easy Meat? Oh god, I'm typing this into the internet. It could be fucking anything. Or even easy, if you spell it right, you stupid bastard. Easy Meat, a book by Peter McLaughlin. Who the fuck is this dude? See, now I can search for stuff. That's what I intend to do. Or I can search for stuff on the stream. Who is this guy? Can we see? Is there a wiki? There we go. Peter McLaughlin. Peter McLaughlin, CEO of Vulcan Sports. That's not at all. He's an American businessman, formerly the team president of the Seattle Seahawks. I doubt it somehow. You dickhead. Peter McLaughlin, UK. Robinson and McLaughlin's Quran Resisting Hate. Let's have a look. Mohammed's... he's the guy who co-wrote that. Okay. So, an impartial guide, as you can see. Peter McLaughlin, yeah, they wrote this thing, Muhammad's Quran, Why Muslims Kill for Islam, where they basically take bits out of the Quran and say, oh look, Muslims are horrible, which you can do to any religious grouping. You could do the exact same shit with the Bible. And don't tell me, oh, but Christians aren't doing terrorist attacks. Yes, they fucking are. Absolutely they are. What do you think that evil motherfucker who went into the mosque in New Zealand was doing? He was doing it for Western civilization and the Judeo-Christian fucking blah-de-blah and Christianity must reign supreme and all that shit. So don't fucking tell me you can't do exactly the same thing. It's almost as if most people, even though they claim to believe in these things, don't actually follow the rules in those books. They might do the fasting and the praying 5 times a day, or in the case of Christians, they might go to church on Sunday and fucking, I don't know, what else do Christians who fast on Easter or some shit, or just give up one thing for Easter because it's too hard. They don't follow the horrible shit. Anyway, so that's Peter McLaughlin. So that's the person who's writing. And by the way, he's not a very good writer. I read through this earlier, and he several spelling mistakes. It's not quite War Corpsian in its level of illiteracy, but it's pretty bad. Anyway, he published Easy Meat, the only book in Britain which exposes the history and scale of the grooming gang cover-up. In some considerable detail, the book exposes that each organisation which had some professional responsibility to the victims had instead turned its back on the victims. These crimes, which have been covered up since the 1970s, were by the way, the crimes of paedophilia in Britain go way back beyond 1970s. Okay, the Catholic Church and indeed the Church of England have been doing this for, well, potentially millennia, but certainly since the beginning of the 20th century, let's say. So, have been covered up since the 1970s, were forced into the public debate from 2010 onwards, but by 2015, the state and the controlled media found a new way to advance the cover-up. Easy Meat was republished to draw attention, blah blah blah, really cared, justice reform, right. You can read more. Was this the thing I wanted to read? No, there's a thing. There's a thing later on. I can't be bothered to read through all of it. Anyway, but yeah, so they're really hot on the grooming gang scandal, which is interesting because Tommy Robinson, of course, once famously told a 15-year-old Asian girl on Twitter, back when he had a Twitter account, lol, that she was quite fit for an Asian. No, quite fit for a Muslim when she was 15. Maybe some inclinations there, Tommy, you might want to look into. Just saying, brah. And we've got the receipts, so, you know. Disestablishment of the Church of England. Carl, by the way, claims to be an atheist. He's getting closer and closer by the day to taking the God pill. This is embarrassing. Disestablishment of the Church of England. A strong church that teaches positive value in an age of uncertainty is a great value to our nation. Instead of leading it, is simply becoming a reflection. This is what I mean by the poor writing. It should be. I'll add the punctuation in for you, Peter. Instead of leading, it is simply becoming a reflection of our increasingly secular culture. Oh no! Secularism is terrible. How are we supposed to enforce our rules on the Muslims if we're secular? Its desire to maintain political power and influence seems to have been its driving force. The 24 bishops in the House of Lords have becoming a laughingstock. The 24 bishops in the House of Lords have becoming a laughingstock, which is ironic that you would call someone else a laughingstock when you can't even write the sentence properly, you fucking illiterate twat. And no longer provide any moral guidance to the nation. That's not true. The House of Lords, even though the House of Lords shouldn't exist, and even if it should, it certainly shouldn't have fucking bishops of the Church of England in there. It's ridiculous, but those bishops are actually probably the best members of their house and do actually give proper guidance. What they mean is they're not telling the Muslims to go fuck themselves, they're not telling the gays and the trans to go fuck themselves. That's what they mean. Anyway, the Church of England has been irrelevant at best and should be cut adrift to find its own way in society without being propped up financially by the state. Now, it shouldn't be provided financially by the state, but the thing is, what do you mean by that? Do you mean that you want to replace it with some other branch of the Church of England? Or do you want us to actually not have a state religion, in which case we would be officially secular, you dopey bastards? What do you want here? What are you asking for? I'll just punch the fucking microphone. Anyway, what are you asking for? Because I agree, I am in favour of the disestablishment of the Church of England. We shouldn't have a state religion. And yes, we do have a state religion here. My tax money goes to propping up the head of the Church of England, who is also the head of our fucking state. It's an embarrassment. A throwback to a much fucking bygone medieval bullshit age. But regardless, what is it that these pricks are actually asking for? I shudder to think. Anyway. Invisibilisation? Is that even a fucking word? Let's have a look at this shit. That sounds made up, but it might not be. Invisibilisation? Many sentences. Invisibilisation of ethnic minority disadvantage. Invisibilisation seems to be French or something. Look, translation from French to English. What? Popular translations, invisibility.
Invisibilisation.
Okay, whatever. Anyway, invisibilisation and underachievement of boys. Just in case you thought they might be inclusive of white women. No, it's just the boys. Okay. Our boys are being left behind by a system that seems more concerned about diversity and a gender experiment than helping our kids fulfill their full potential. Again, just in case you thought they were being like vaguely accepting of white people in general, even if they hate, obviously, people of colour. Obviously, look at the people involved in this organisation. They hate the Browns. Again, not the Cleveland Browns, different thing entirely. But they're not even inclusive of all white people. Okay, white women can fuck off, as you can see here with diversity and gender experiments and stuff. So women can fuck off. Trans people can fuck off. We'll get onto the LGBTQ thing in just a second, because that gets brought up. And this is the problem with all these fascist pricks. Well, no, it's not the problem, it's one of the problems. Even if you're a white person who thinks they can escape in this situation, you will most certainly cannot. I assure you, you almost certainly won't. Very, very few people meet these fuckers' exacting standards. And when I say exacting standards, I don't mean of like quality or usefulness or just generally something worthwhile. No, I'm talking about like just being a white, straight, cis, able-bodied dude. That's it. That's all. Anyway. Family breakdown with increasing lack of contact with fathers have left many boys with no male role models. Considering the male role models you've got going on here, I don't think that's necessarily always a bad thing. In this vacuum, gangs have flourished and boys have lost interest in educational achievement. It's time to reclaim stability, positivity, and put a sense of hope in our young people. Now, note, in our young people. Because here it says boys, young people. There are, and again, look at that. That's, he's returned, read more. The read more on invisibilization is exactly the same thing. There's no read more. Anyway, and that's true of quite a few of these, actually. It's only really the grooming gangs where they go into any more detail at all, but whatever. Where do I go back to the return to issues? There we go. I could just press back, but I'm pernickety. Anyway, so a sense of hope in our young people. I think that's true. That last statement is absolutely true. It's time to reclaim stability, positivity, and a sense of hope in our young people. That's why I advocate for a socialist reclamation of the British and indeed world economy, because I think that would do that, but it would do it for a diverse. It would do it on behalf of all people, including the diverse and gender experiment and the oh no, the trans people and the blacks are going to get something. No, is their basic whine. Ironic. Strong borders, immigration and national identity. Oh, well, I can only assume with Tommy Robinson now being an immigrant, he's not massively in favour of strong borders. I would think. Let's take a look. The UK has become a country that is unsure of its national identity, treats celebration of our culture as racism, citation needed, encourages other national cultural expressions to replace British traditions, always has. The British traditions that you love are relatively modern, I assure you. The fucking Ethelred was not doing this shit, okay? Dickheads. Has abandoned any proper teaching of British history in our schools. Oh no, we accept that colonialism wasn't perfect. How terrible. And has accepted borders so porous that we no longer know who is coming into the country. We never really did. Tommy, you fucking idiot. And like I say, it's just ironic that they would bring this shite up when Tommy Robinson is an immigrant now. I mean, Spain, I think Spain needs much stronger borders to keep out the kind of rabble that are coming over from Britain, myself. Spain, come on now. Your border is so porous, you're allowing in fucking arseholes. Although, to be fair, he's only very, very small. So, look, you could understand how he would slip through the net. Because even a very fine net, Tommy could still get through. He's not a sizable chap. Anyway, Protecting our children. Apparently dealing with grooming gangs, that wasn't enough. They need to also go into this thing. Protecting our children. Where are we? It's protecting our children. The system, quote unquote, shouldn't they have parentheses around it? Because that's what they mean, isn't it? They mean the Jews. I'm sure they mean the Jews. So imagine that as echo marks there, right? The system, Jews, used to have protection of children at its core. Yet we are now seeing a proliferation of agendas that have replaced the question of what is best for a child with the desire for them to use them as social experiments. So what do they mean by that exactly? Shall we read on and find out what the system are doing to our children? The rise of the militant LGBT lobby. The gays are all paedophiles, according to Thomas J. Mohammed Robinson III, Esquire. That's what they mean there. The militant LGBT want to turn all your children into gays. Only the white ones, though, because that's how they drive down the white birth rates. That's how the Goyim know, apparently, though. So, terrible stuff. Anyway, LGBT lobby, which now seeks to sexualise children for its own ideological goals, is a perverse failure of the state to provide our children and put their best interests at heart. Or even interests at heart. Again, unless you mean the Scottish Football Club, that's wrong. You don't need an S there, Peter. You're a fucking professional author, are you? Dickhead. Anyway, it's nothing to do with the LGBT lobby, okay? The actual system, not the Jews, the actual system has for far too long in Britain let children down across the board by not taking seriously pedophile threats and stuff. But again, not just the Muslims, across the board, okay? Jimmy Savile was not a Muslim. He was not an immigrant. He did rape lots of children for decades. A lot of people in powerful positions who could have stopped it didn't. That's the point, okay? The same is true of the Catholic Church and the Church of England and various other things, okay? It's got nothing to do with race or religion. It's not political correctness, it's just the system let children down. Anyway. Authorities privileging and protecting Islam alone. So again, just having a go at the Muslims for the grooming gang thing wasn't enough. Apparently they're protecting Islam alone. That's an accurate depiction of reality. Clearly! Now, get ready for some of the most self-refuting bullshit you will ever see in your life. Note this first sentence. The refusal of our public authorities to acknowledge and intervene in the grooming gang scandal, which has left up to 250,000 victims, is a national disgrace. Now, that is true. To a degree. If you ignore the word refusal, then yeah, okay? Because they're saying they refused to acknowledge or intervene, and intervene, okay? They refused to acknowledge or intervene. Up to 250,000, blah, blah, blah. Right. Since the rape gangs were brought to the attention of the public in the public 2011, that's supposed to be the public in 2011, 400 people have been charged in over 40 towns all over the UK. So, not really a refusal then, is it? 400 people have been charged. 400 fucking people have been charged. That's not a refusal to acknowledge and intervene. You can argue, dear viewer, about the level to which the authorities have acknowledged and intervened in the matter. That's a perfectly fine conversation. I think they should have gone far further and far earlier. But the point is, you can't say they refuse to acknowledge a thing that they've charged 400 fucking people for. You can't lie in the first sentence and then refute yourself in the very next sentence. You fucking idiots. But it gets even better because the next sentence is even more stupid. Now, you should never start a sentence off with a number, a numerical. Just first and foremost, you're a professional writer apparently, Peter. You should know that. But whatever, 85% of those charged are Muslims, which explains why our police and councils refuse to act. I'm going to highlight that entire sentence for you. 85% of those charged are Muslim, which explains why the police refused to act. Charged, refused to act. Charged, refused to act. Charged, refused to act. Those two things are not the fucking same, are they? They are mutually exclusive. If they refuse to act, who the fuck charged them? Fucking pigeons? No. The police and councils charged them. Well, technically, the Crown Prosecution Service would have had to go through the whole fucking thing, but it was the police that charged them. And councils which investigated many of these things via the fucking social security... what do they call them? Fuck off. Social workers, whatever that's the fucking organisation's called. Anyway. Yeah, so the police and councils charged people. They didn't refuse to act. Again, you can argue about the level to which they acted and whether they acted expeditiously enough, which for any of the Tommy idiots watching means, did they act quickly enough or not? You can argue that point till the cows come home. That's fine. That's an argument and a conversation I'm more than willing to have. The point is, you can't say they refused to act when literally in the same fucking sentence, a few words earlier, you say that they've been charged. Fucking idiots. Ooh. Got quite heated there. Apologies. Apologies, my dear viewer. Now, I also just want to contend here when it says 85% of those charged are Muslims. Now, when it comes to the overall problem of child sexual exploitation in Britain, grooming gangs are a very small part of that. A very small part, like 5% or something ridiculous. So, of that 5%, 85% are Muslims. Now, I've no doubt there's fudging involved in those numbers, but let's just take 85%. So, 85% of 5% is virtually fuck all. It's like 4% of the overall total number, which is not a lot, actually. So, whilst even if that number is true, the 85%, what they're doing here is lying by omission. They're suggesting and trying to insinuate that 85% of all child rape, or at least those charged with child rape, even though apparently they've been refused to act against them, but whatever, 85% of those charged with child sexual exploitation are Muslim. And that is a lie. It isn't true. The tiny percentage of sexual exploitation, which is specifically grooming gangs, although you won't hear that phrase used by the police very often, but you know, it is a thing that gets talked about. But those involved in that kind of gang activity are a very small percentage. So the fact that Muslims make up a significant number of that is something that needs to be dealt with, but clearly doesn't mean that they're like the menace that Tommy wants to portray them as. Because actually, and I know that you can get white Muslims, but I'm using the distinction that these motherfuckers will make in their own minds. The vast majority of those being raped, be they of sexual age or not, are being raped by white men. Yeah, because we're a majority white country. That's how that works. Anyway, moving on. A fear of being labelled racist and Islamophobic. That's a standalone sentence. Doesn't really deserve to be there, and the exclamation point doesn't look very professional, but whatever. Again, it wasn't because they were being, and I'm going to insinuate or I'm going to infer that you mean that those two things are connected, although you didn't actually explain that because you were one of the worst writers ever, frankly. You were almost War Corps, you know, they're not quite. Anyway, they wasn't because they feared being called racist or Islamophobic. Because if that were the case, what would be the excuse for allowing the Catholic Church to do the same thing during roughly the same time frame? In fact, they were doing it significantly longer. What's the excuse about Jimmy Savile? What's the excuse about Rolf Harris or Stuart Hall or any number of other child rapists, people who were engaged in child sexual exploitation, who weren't Muslims, who were white? Why were they allowed to get away with it as well? It's because the British government and the British police service and British social services, that's the fucking phrase I was looking for, social services have been far too lenient and frankly what's the word I'm looking for? Remiss in their duties, I suppose, in not dealing with pedophilia. They have allowed child sex crimes to just go completely unpunished as a part of British culture for decades, if not centuries. That is a failing of the British state, which needs to be corrected immediately, and a lot of people need to go to prison, although I suspect neither of those things will actually happen, but that is just a fact. It's not about race, it's not about religion, it's about the police being shit. Which is unsurprising given the recent events coming out of the Americas, lest we forget, albeit a slightly different matter there, but still, the point stands. If you're a vulnerable group, be it children or an ethnic minority or whatever, the police probably don't have your best interests at heart, would be what I would suggest. Anyway, our government have refused to say if any council officials or police officers have been prosecuted for turning a blind eye to abuse happening under their noses. Now, I don't know if they have refused to say that or not, but all I will say, as a general point, is that if anyone, not if anyone, those who were involved in turning a blind eye, and indeed in some cases not just turning a blind eye, but having seen the abuse itself and not done anything about it, need to go to prison forever. There we go. Freedoms of the peaches! Oh, you knew this was fucking coming. Freedoms of the peaches. Let's do this. We face an unprecedented onslaught on our abilities to speak freely in society. Dickheads, we have lived in rarely a freer time in the history of mankind. Okay? I'm not suggesting there are no problems with free speech and no people who seek to take it away from us, although I would look at your side for examples of people who literally want to take away free speech from every motherfucker. But regardless, you have rarely in the history of mankind seen a place or a time that is more free than now. So when you say unprecedented onslaught, you are talking shit. Just obvious, complete shit. Continuing. Our ability to speak freely in society on issues which the establishment has decreed as off limits. Establishment, again, read establishment as having the the three parentheses there, because again they mean the Jews. Has decreed as off limits. Again, no. Why your free speech violations are happening all the time, often by right-wing governments, by the way. And the only time you will ever hear these motherfuckers complain is when they want to do like racism on Facebook or Twitter or something. Which I think tells you where their head's at, you know? I think that tells you exactly where they're at. Ridiculous. Free speech is the bedrock of a free society, with open and free debate being one of the big drivers of innovation and justice. That's true to an extent. But what I will say is that both Thomas Mohammed Robinson and Carl Hussein Benjamin, and I think those are their proper names. I might get that wrong. Who knows? Have both supported Donald Trump sending in unmarked, unlabelled federal troops to use unmarked, unlabelled vans to abduct American citizens for protesting. So, if there's an onslaught on free speech, I would suggest maybe, motherfuckers, look in the mirror. Again, not the newspaper. Look in the shiny object where one would see a reflection of the thing in front of oneself, which is usually yourself, unless you're standing at an angle. Don't stand at an angle. Stand directly in front of the mirror, look in it. You are the threat to free speech. Anyhow, and the last one, media bias. Trust in the BBC and the mainstream media is at an all-time low. That may be true. That may very well be true. I don't know, and I don't really care. It's not necessarily a sign of... oh, sorry, I'm trying to shuffle around here. That's not necessarily a sign of bias. It could just be that they're shit, but unbiasedly shit, which isn't true. They actually are biased. In fact, the BBC News, the entire staff of the BBC News during the election, their collective saliva was bathing Boris Johnson's penis for the entirety of the election campaign in December. Seriously, he got that kind of wrinkly stuff you get on the bottom of your feet if you're in the bath too long. That, you know what I mean? That's how much they were sucking his dick throughout the campaign. He was an embarrassment, whilst of course dredging up every lie against Jeremy Corbyn under the sun. So yeah, I would agree, they are biased, but again, nowhere near in the direction you think they are. Anywho, that is the Hearts of Oak organisation. Absolute trash. Look at them. Absolute garbage. All three of them. But I thought I'd bring that to you anyway, because that amused me. Anyway. Boom! My pictures are back. So, that's the organisation which will be doing the rally in London. I'm sure they'll garner a whole 12 people to turn up. Or some dumb shit like that. And who cares? Honestly. They're fucking irrelevant. But I just thought I'd bring that to you as a way of exploring it, because I didn't know who the fuck these motherfuckers were until I heard Tommy say that organisation's name in the video, and I was like, who are they? And looked them up. So I thought I'd bring that to you. I discovered a thing, now you've discovered it too, and we're both probably significantly less intelligent for having heard of any of these people. We have not increased our knowledge, we have merely diluted our good knowledge with this shit knowledge. You're very welcome. Anyway. Yes, so Tommy's fucked off to Spain. The filthy immigrant. Do you see what I did? I did the thing that he does about the immigrants, because it's funny. It's so funny. It's such a good political point to make, isn't it, Tommy? You dickhead. Anyway. Thank you all for listening and watching. Tommy can go fuck himself, naturally. And I will see thee all whenever the fuck I do next time. I might be on tomorrow. There might be a happy hour that I'll stream here. I don't fucking know. Anyway, take care.